G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Bailey. Today we'll be looking at Epstein's driver and what he says about Jeffrey Epstein and sort of open up a can of worms that sort of really has happened since the new release of 3 million documents from the Epstein files. So let's get into it. Without further ado, let's play this video.
And it's important to note this is all anonymous. We have no idea who this man was. Although based on his claims, we have good reason to believe he was telling the truth. This post was made on 7/1/2020, which was a Wednesday at 6:05 p.m. and it became at the time one of the most popping threads on the entire platform. It begins with him saying the following: "I'm going to tomorrow. X, I'm also sending 3 packets of copied information to the media, 1 to CNN, 1 to MSNBC, and 1 to Fox News. You'll all have to see which one tells the truth about the information they receive and who doesn't. I trust 4chan to do this because of our history of releasing legit info in the face of mass media cover-up. I have been a professional driver / security guard for a circle of very wealthy people for almost 8 years. I started by working the door at a private gentleman's club outside of the DC area. From that job, I was introduced to some employment managers for Jeffrey Epstein because I had experience as both a cab driver and a bouncer, as well as always overlooking and keeping my mouth shut about the drugs and prostitution my employers at the club profited from. They thought I'd be a good fit to work the weekends for Mr. Epstein. At first, I didn't do very much, definitely nothing important. I would run errands mostly and do anything my manager, parentheses, who reported directly to Mr. Epstein, wanted me to do. So say the gardener calls out sick one day, it would be me mowing the lawn in his place. I was sort of a floating general helper. Inevitably, I ran into Mr. Epstein now and then, and he was always very personable, enthusiastic. I had heard about his original court case and the rumors and everything, but just meeting this guy made me feel like it was all a lie because he seemed so kind and genuine. I thought he was really just this hotshot money man, like a Bruce Wayne or Tony Stark kind of figure, and I think ultimately that's how he wanted all of us to see him. His God complex was, to say the least, very developed. Right off the bat, the first thing this driver mentions that's critical is he worked at clubs in DC, and it's no surprise that has become one of the main places of a lot of the degeneracy with the recent file drops, considering how many politicians are involved in this. Admittedly, for now, this is somewhat of a looser connection, but it only gets more and more direct as we continue. The people replying to the driver on this thread began getting very curious to see if he knew more, and a lot of people started chiming in and asking him questions, and so OP continued. Eventually, I was trusted with bigger jobs. I think I got a good reputation because I cleaned up one of Mr. Epstein's bedrooms one day. There was, to my dismay, a mixture of poop and semen on the bed sheets. I dealt with it professionally, and I didn't say anything. I knew by then that someone is always watching. There are cameras in almost every single room, save Mr. Epstein's private office and regular bedroom. Parentheses, he had several bedrooms, but one was his, quote, favorite, I guess, his main room. I never mentioned it to anyone, but I still got a thank you from my manager for being discreet. One day I was asked to go pick up a masseuse from a bus station. I didn't ask her her age. I knew better, but she couldn't have been more than 16. I got a really bad feeling in my stomach because at this point denying Mr. Epstein's tastes would be borderline irrational. I did my job, though I took her to his house and a few hours later took her back to the bus stop. She was crying. I didn't talk to her about it. A few weeks later, I did it again. Now my manager tells me that Mr. Epstein would like me to take over all of his various pickups and drop-offs. They called it, quote, cutie duty, parentheses, effing barf. But it was more than just girls. I would pick up drugs and other assorted packages, most of which I had no idea the contents, but as far as I was concerned, the less I knew the better. I was getting paid very well for the amount of work I was doing. In a given day, I spend 3, maybe 4 hours doing anything that could be considered work. The rest of the time, I either sat in my car browsing 4chan on my phone or inside pretending like I was rich and this was my house. For this, I was being paid $75K a year, more than I'd ever even hoped to have made in my whole life. When I took over doing most of the driving, it went up to $115. Every time my job became more illegal, the money would get better. That's his tactic. He knows that people will do just about anything for the right price. So far, everything is on point, especially with the most recent updates and the references to torture and the other things going on at Epstein's house. So let's continue. And in response to people asking him why he's now coming out with all this, OP says the following: I just want people to know, I guess. Call it a public confession because I'm guilty. I guess I don't care that much because I'm gonna be. I've done things I can't forgive myself for, and I think they'll have me anyway. I'm going to do it on my own terms. At this moment, I do want to queue up a video posted by a YouTuber who just a few days ago posted a video about Epstein's Island and visiting it, and now he has people in black vans outside of his house. So apparently they will come after you if you reveal any amount of information that's not out there already, I guess. The post continues from there, Anyway, Mr. Epstein is very shrewd. He pays you a lot of money, but not enough for the crap you have to do. And he tries to find the absolute least amount he can pay to keep you doing it. For me, disgracefully, that was around $150K. I stayed on cutie duty for about 4 months, then Mr. Epstein took a trip abroad and he loaned me out to another family, the Romneys. Now, keep in mind, I never met Mitch Romney, and I don't think I even worked for him. I just worked for the family. I reported to an employment manager as usual. I was tasked with driving a young man named Cole around wherever he wanted. Cole was probably 22 and already had his license suspended for drunk driving. He lived in a huge house out in the middle of nowhere outside Boulder, Colorado. Man, it was beautiful. If I could have stayed there forever, I would have. I suspect it was a vacation, quote, cabin, really more of a mansion owned by his parents, but I digress. Every weekend, we would drive into the city. He would get extremely drunk, find a woman or prostitute, and I'd take us all back home. Cole was a piece of total crap. If you remember Scumbag Steve, just imagine if Steve's parents were multimillionaires, if not billionaires, and you get the idea. So one Sunday morning after a typical Saturday night, I report for duty at 8 a.m. sharp, knowing darn well that Cole isn't going to drag his butt out of bed until at least 3 p.m. Here he comes hobbling down the driveway in his socks to my car. He usually texts when he's up, and I come inside and start cleaning up his messes. No text today. He comes over to the car as I'm stepping out. He says, "Hey buddy, we kinda got a problem. It's not that big of a deal, okay? What? Let's see it." We go inside, upstairs in his bedroom. His girl from last night is lying face up and her mouth is pooled with vomit. She is most definitely dead. As far as I can tell, she overdosed on whatever combination of prescription drugs they were doing, passed out, puked, then suffocated on her own vomit. I'm absolutely flipping out, and I've got my phone out dialing 911. Cole slaps it out of my hand and says to me to hold on. He says he can get in trouble because it will look bad for his family. I said, "Cole, you've already been getting into trouble." He says he knows, just not this kind of trouble. He says I'll get a big bonus if I just deal with it myself. Now I'm way out here in the middle of nowhere, and the implication of my employment in this circle has been that if I mess up, I might suffer harsh consequences. I know what I did here was wrong, I know that, and I am sorry. Once again, especially with the most recent Epstein files, talking about torture and the eating of children, this seems exactly on point, and we know he has connections to Colorado, he being Epstein, so it shouldn't be any surprise. And we'll probably look into the family being referenced here a little bit later. Quote, I asked him what I'm supposed to do. He says just wait. He gets a different phone out of a drawer and starts making calls. After a few minutes, I'm waiting in the hallway. He's casually pacing around the corpse. He gives me the GPS coordinates given for a little spot off 111 out in the mountains. I'm supposed to wrap her up, take her out there, and drop her off. He said there will be guys waiting there to take her. It's a long drive, and I don't look forward to it one bit. I wrap her up in his comforter. He stops me. Bro, he says, not that blanket. That's like the softest blanket in the world, dude. No way. And he gets me a different blanket from the closet. A real gentleman, Cole was. Funny enough, in the dark way, these coordinates do lead quite literally into the middle of nowhere in the mountains off of the beaten path, and there are all sorts of suspicious things out there. We'll look into it a little bit more later, though, after we read through the rest of the story, because it is a very real possibility that if we started digging and got the dogs out, we'd probably find some bodies out there. OP then continues his story. He's got an F-150 on the property used for landscaping work. I put her body in the bed with a tarp on top of it, and then I fill the rest of the truck back with landscaping supplies. Fertilizer, tools, etc. I try to make it look really natural and boring. I'm crapping myself. I can't believe I'm actually doing this, but he's promising me that if I get busted, I'll have the best lawyers money can buy, and I believe him. She's dead already anyway, and it's unlikely he would even get into any real legal trouble. Just bad press. So what's the difference? The whole time driving, I'm just sweating right through my clothes. I have to stop twice to puke. When I get there, there's a little dirt spot you can pull off into, and sure enough, there's a big black SUV and a Jeep with off-road tires. Side note from me, that is actually exactly right. There is a dirt pull-off, and unless OP has been there, I'm not sure how he would have found this place and been so accurate about it. Continuing with OP's post, I'm not just about to assume that these are the right body people, so I stop and get out and approach the SUV. The window rolls down, and there's a woman who's probably in her 50s and a big guy driving. I don't know what to say, so I'm just kind of like, how's it going? Feeling like a complete idiot, she makes a call and describes me to the person on the phone. Then she puts it down and says, "We're who you're looking for. Is it under all the stuff in the bed?" I say, "Yeah. Do you need help?" She says, "No. Take a break." So I walk into the trees a little bit and smoke a cigarette or two. They've got her out and pull her into the Jeep within about 5 minutes. The woman tells me to wait 15 minutes before I leave, and then they pull out and drive away. Jeep drives further into the woods. I wait maybe 7 minutes, and then I leave. I got a text later telling me to not ever leave early again. It was from a blocked number. Remember for later when we look into those coordinates of the dump site, that he was told to wait 15 minutes, and that the vehicle he was with had off-road tires. Continuing, so when I get back to the house, Cole is sitting at the kitchen table eating a massive bowl of Fruit Loops with a big serving spoon, watching Love and Hip Hop. This man is like a child, and he hasn't even gotten dressed yet. He asked me to wash his blanket and sheets. I do it. We get really drunk that night, and Cole tells me this has happened twice before, and it's always fine. He says he's like Scarface and stuff. I hate him. The remaining few months go by without incident, and he gets his license back, freeing me at last. Mr. Epstein doesn't need me at this time, but I do get referred as a reliable driver to the bigwigs at Def Jam Records, who assigned me to work on Rihanna's crew while she promoted Talk That Talk at the time of her 6th and newest album. At this point, let's once again reiterate that it's coming out that practically all of the major stars and people in Hollywood and the music industry are in the files. Opie's next post goes as follows. I never met Miss Rihanna in person, just in passing now and then, but I found this job to agree with me a lot better than the others. I drove a van stacked with promotional gear from city to city while she toured. A few times I was sent to pick up Molly and was taught to use test strips for purity. If it was not pure, I was supposed to walk away, but it was always pure. There are circles within circles of connections. I believe there's an entire shadow economy strictly for the rich and famous to get their rocks off collectively, which, my opinion at this point with the Epstein files, seems to be dead on. Continuing, one thing I did learn about Rihanna is that she enjoys young females as well. I was sent to pick up 2 young girls and bring them to her hotel room. Of course, I was met outside the door by someone more important than me. This struck me as odd because as far as I understand, Rihanna is not a billionaire like Epstein, but she was even more insulated and protected than he was. I'm sure a lot of that has to do with just personal choices regarding security, but I also get the picture that in this world, influence and money both equal power, and Rihanna, especially in the 2011-2012 period, was highly influential. All I had to do was mention her name and girls would get in the car, just like that. At this point, things get very interesting in the original thread. We have someone who is not actually the original poster or OP coming out and saying the following sentence. I can't do this, you guys. I made this all up. Mods delete this thread. It's a crap post, and I'm just a troll. I'm sorry, and I won't do it again. What's strange about that is, like I said, this is not OP. This is someone pretending to be OP. So right away, once this story starts mentioning specific names and getting into the depths of what's going on, people are coming out of the woodwork to try and claim to be OP and get this thread taken down from 4chan. Now, chalk this up to anything if it was one guy, but it's a lot of them. People start telling OP to take his own, call him a fed, and it continues for quite a while. There are all sorts of things that happened in the aftermath of him dropping Rihanna's name and this Cole family name. All I'll say is it's very odd, but on brand when you start revealing this sort of information. From here, OP continues, saying, nice try, for all the people trying to get his thread taken down. And he says, so the most noteworthy thing that happened while working for Def Jam is when Rihanna had a party to celebrate the end of her tour. Everybody was there. I mean, all the pop stars were there. Jonas Brothers, Lady Gaga, Justin Bieber, and even a few old heads like Elton John and some actors. If I'm not wrong, every single one of those people is in the files, or almost every single one of them. Continuing, I noticed John Travolta for sure, Seth Rogen, Emma Stone, Bradley Cooper, to name just a few. I'm also pretty sure those are all people in the files too. For this party, I was, of course, tasked with getting entertainment. They wanted, quote, as young as I could get and as many as I could get, end quote. Ostensibly, they were being hired to be wait staff, which is an excuse we've seen in other files and other people's releases, valet drivers, etc. But the plan is to switch it up on them when they actually get there. Give them drugs, money, whatever they need to do what they wanted them to do, which is essentially to be all expenses paid prostitutes for whoever wants them. That part, thankfully, was not my job. I'm just the piece of crap who tricked them into going. I picked up 5 young girls from a mall, a couple of teenage boys I found walking along the road. Quick side note, no one ever mentions the guys that got abducted and trafficked into this ring, but there are certainly a lot of them. And then I got a hold of an escort company to fill out and make an even dozen. The ones from the escort company were not underage, and I was very severely chastised for it. My manager basically asked if I ever wanted to work again. I said yes. He said, then act like you've got some gosh darn sense. I didn't make this mistake again. After the tour ended, I was just on my own for a month or so. I rented a house near Tulsa and basically insulated the whole time. I was starting to get ideas in my head about going to trade school or something when I was called back to come work for Mr. Epstein again. Needless to say, for OP, things did not get better and he did not go to trade school. It's only gonna get darker from here, so let's continue. At this point, I've developed a bad coke habit, of which I have only been sober for a few months to this day. I needed something to make me do it. Coke makes you feel numb in a way that not much else does, and believe me, I've tried just about everything. There are research chemicals that no one has even heard of that get traded around in these circles. When I came back to work for Mr. Epstein on his island, this is the first reference to the island in the story, I was going through an 8-ball every day or two. I binge drank at night, but I had to keep focused during the day. The coke wired me up, and the liquor brought me back down again. That's the only way mentally I could really cope with what's happening. I was flown to his now infamous island to be one of the regular staff. Essentially, I lived on the island now for free, while getting paid to maintain the grounds and keep the buildings up. When Mr. Epstein was there, obviously he would bring his own entertainment, so I didn't have to do that. I thought this sounds like a freaking fantastic deal. Island paradise, great wages, not much real work, count me in. Out of all my sins, I believe sloth is the most damaging one I could indulge in. I always look for the easy dollar, and that's why I am prey for people like this. And here's where the thread about the island begins. Now, first of all, this island is like paradise on earth. It's always a comfortable temperature, the rains are breathtakingly beautiful, and the architecture and decor of the houses are exquisite. Yes, the bathhouse is really creepy. The fake doors are there to confuse flyby surveillance. If anyone was wondering, the other regular staff were hard to get along with. They were all creeps, and I mean capital C freaking creeps. It made me wonder about myself, honestly, that I'm put here with them. They all joked about getting Mr. Epstein's, quote, leftovers, and the talk was constantly about when Mr. Epstein was going to visit the island again, when he would bring important people there, world leaders, CEOs, etc. I and most of the staff were kept totally out of sight. We weren't allowed to work in an area unless we knew it was empty. Only his most trusted employees could actually be in the building with him and high-powered friends. Sometimes though, it would just be the family and things were more relaxed. I passed by his office once carrying some garbage when he beckoned me inside. He asked me my name and I told him. He offered me a seat and I took it. You don't get far in this business by saying no. And he began to talk to me. He looked really stressed. He asked me how anything that feels good could be bad. He had a big painting of Oscar Wilde and considered him a personal hero. He began to explain hedonism to me, which is ironic, and asked me if I understood. Of course I said. Who doesn't like fun? He said, lots of people. Then he let me go about my duties. At this point, these messages have been going on for about 3 hours, so it's getting later at night. And this is when OP interjects a story that we all should probably pay extra close attention to. I messed up really bad one evening and entered one of the maintenance sheds to return some tools I'd been using and saw the sweaty, pale back of a large man hunched over and thrusting. He had a tattoo of Nixon on his back and he was wearing a bull's head mask. He was messing with one of the regulars. I don't even know how to phrase this one. With the staff member's mouth. He turns to me. I'm just standing in shock. And he says quietly, "Do you mind?" And I slam the door shut. As I'm closing the door, I get a glimpse of my coworker's face and he is crying. I Googled Nixon back tattoo later and realized the man was Roger Stone, who I'd never heard of up to that point. I knew I was in deep crap. The next day, and for 2 weeks after, I got all the worst jobs. Trash pickup, cleaning toilets, scrubbing his boats. It freaking sucked, but I kept my mouth shut anyway. As far as I understood, my pay not been cut, so whatever. I'll do the crappy jobs where I'm by myself because at least, hey, I'm by myself, and that's fine with me. And I think we should probably assume that Roger Stone is also in these files. If he is, when we look it up later, we'll see what he's been accused of. The thread continues several hours later. This is at this point into the next early morning, and people have been saying that OP shouldn't take his life and that he was a better guy than he thinks. OP did not believe that, so let's continue. I'm not a good guy, but thank you. If this was the movies, The Punisher or whoever would rip my spine on my back, and I deserve it. I'm not a good guy. Anyway, things started getting really tense on the island from that point. People started making little comments to me about being nosy or about minding my own business. I was starting to get worried I'd be branded a, quote, troublemaker, which you really don't want to be. Things turned very quickly in this business. That's how they've kept a lid on it for so long. Any small mistake and you're out. Most people are let go with NDAs and the understanding that they will be watched the rest of their lives, which ultimately is how I got out as well. After Epstein died, they cut me loose. I guess they figure since he's dead, nothing I'd know would matter anyway. They're probably right, honestly, it probably won't matter anyway. But the rest of my life on that island was pure terror. I was just waiting to be taken away or worse. Never happened, but I was still really scared. I saw a few of their weird, quote, plays they would do around the bathhouse. Mr. Epstein had a little portable stage. He would get set up. He would wear the bull head I saw Stone wearing and give a big speech about what he called freedom. He would say this island is the only place in the whole world where everyone on it can do whatever they want. And that's bullcrap. Not your employees, not the children you bring here. Total bullcrap. Everyone would cheer. They'd get up and do a sort of conga line dance with tiki torches. Really cringy, old rich people stuff, and go into the bathhouse. There's a trap door in the floor that has not been reported in any of the investigative photos that I've seen, which leads to what they call the chamber. And it's essentially a bondage dungeon. I don't know what all happened in there, and I never want to know. I stayed as far away from that bathhouse as I could. For a long time, we assumed, and some of us knew, that there were tunnels beneath many of Epstein's properties, the island included, and that was recently proven, including the fact that Epstein paid $100,000 to have a concrete mixer truck brought over to the island to immediately fill in the entrances to all of his tunnels. That's not suspicious at all. That being said though, it does co-align with the long-time theory that there's a trap door in this bathhouse that leads into an underground facility, which basically has been proven already with all these tunnels that are being referenced and hopefully one day fully discovered and brought to the public. Continuing, some people began asking OP about his incident with Roger Stone, and OP continues saying, I mean large as in wide. He's a brick of a man. Pick related. In the supply shed, he was taking up basically the entire doorway. So anyway, eventually I got my reputation, for the most part, back into good graces. One time I was helping in the kitchen. I don't know if the chef was messing with me. I hope so. But he was separating what looked to me like a torso of a very young skinned pig. It had been roasted and he was chopping it into quarters. The ribs to be served that evening and the rest broken down for soups and casseroles. I said jokingly that it looked like a little kid. He just gave me this awful dead-eyed look and said for a second, watch it. Some of the allegations that have come out and emails and conversations in this Epstein release, as well as some other scandals and other officials in the American government, their emails that have been leaked, would suggest that and basically tell us that this sort of stuff does happen. Continuing, I worked on that island for about a year. In 2013 to 2014, Mr. Epstein chose me and two other trusted employees from the island to come with him to winter retreat in the Swiss Alps. He owned a small, quote, billionaire small, mind you, cabin, again, mansion, and wanted people he knew could be trusted because most of the staff would be local hires. Our job on the surface was to help manage all the employees, supervisors basically, but the unspoken task was keeping everyone either in the dark or quiet. Mr. Epstein had a real fondness for plump, young Swiss blondes. And the Swiss, as he would explain, have a very, quote, progressive idea of the age of consent. He viewed this as a more relaxed way to do what he does, more casual. Part of the thrill for these people, I think, is the fact that it is illegal and they could get in big trouble when they go to places that are more friendly with the idea of an older man having sex with a 15-year-old. It's to take a break, so to speak. The Alps themselves, wow. I mean, wow. I've been all over the United States and nothing in this country compares to Europe in terms of sheer beauty. Sometimes early in the morning when I'd come out of my cabin and stretch, looking at the trees, smelling the crisp, clean air, just for a minute, I'd forget what I have done and what I'm doing. When it came back to me, I'd have to fight back tears. I want the mountains there to be the last thing I think about before I die. After this, the thread continues for just a little bit longer. I'm gonna read from my phone though, because my other monitor went out. It goes as follows. So I've not been there 3 days while me and the two from the island are doing bumps of coke off a butter knife in the lower garage. A boy, maybe 14, blonde, pale, and naked, comes through the doorway towards us. He's speaking French, but I think I got the gist of what he was saying. He was asking for help. He looked hysterical. Immediately, my two friends, in quotes, were out of there, and I shouldn't have been far behind. I told him, calm down, it's okay. I'm gonna help you. I just wanted him to feel better. This all took maybe 30 seconds before one of the, quote, nannies came in. He looked at her, confused, and I got the picture he was trying to decide if she could be trusted. She couldn't. She shushed him and put her jacket over him and took his hand. She was speaking French as well, and it sounded like a mother consoling a frightened child. She led him back into the house. I did not see him again. I never mentioned it to anyone, and nobody ever mentioned it to me. During my last couple weeks there, I witnessed firsthand the a quote independent journalist. I don't think he was actually a journalist. I think he maybe had a blog or a YouTube channel, but I had never heard of him and don't know his name, so I don't think he was anyone with real connections. He was one of the local hires, a dishwasher, but he was seen with a cell phone out, possibly recording. Me and the other two from the island were asked to go and check it out. So we go get the guy and ask him to empty out his pockets. Sure enough, he's got a phone. We told him to unlock it, he wouldn't. One of the other guys made a call, came back, and slugged him directly in the nose. I think he broke it because there was blood just pouring out and the guy started screaming. I don't think he'd ever been hit before, but me and the other guy held him down. Screw it, I'll say their names. It was Daniel from South Florida and Marcus from Nevada. Marcus and I were holding him down and Daniel punched him again and told him to unlock his phone. He complied this time, and sure enough, there were pictures and videos from inside the house. We knew he hadn't sent anything out because only wired connections worked there. I guess they had signal jammers or something, or maybe just because it was remote, I don't know. Anyway, Daniel makes another call and tells us to take him outside into the woods. I think we're just gonna threaten him and make him sign an NDA, but Daniel took his belt off and strangled him to death. We had to put his body up in an outbuilding because the ground was frozen. We put him through a chipper and then burned everything to ash. There were bits of charred bone left over. I swept it all into a trash bag and threw it out with the regular garbage. This, above everything else, I feel the most guilty for. After that, if I wasn't, quote, in before, I definitely was in now. Me, Marcus, and Daniel, the three frickin' stooges from hell. Daniel had been in the military, and I think he had a few screws loose because he always had a temper. He became the go-to guy for the really dirty stuff. I started working for Mr. Epstein directly after this. He would confide in me sometimes when he was very high about how nothing really makes him feel good enough. He told me once that he hasn't felt happy in years. I wish I had the stones to tell him that the life he is living is only bringing him down. For a brief moment, I felt empathy for this man. I think that too was part of his game though. I don't think he's ever had a single genuine feeling in his life outside of sexual gratitude. He never mentioned the journalist to me. It was like it never happened. But we both knew that this was the reason I was now working directly for him. Almost there, almost there. Listen, I think I've said about all I care to right now. I'm gonna go get a bottle of something before all the stores close. If this thread is still here in a few hours, I'll answer some questions and tell some more stories. All right, boys, I'm back on my way to being a really mean drunk. Ask me questions. I don't know anything about a secret phone, and that sounds like something above my pay grade. How do I make encrypted message files? After this OP gets more and more infrequent, I don't think he's
You are it, Dad.
at all. He was whip smart. I just don't think he had any emotional intelligence, maybe. I think he was hollow inside for the most part. They called them plays and theater, but from my eyes, yeah. I would say the speeches and stuff I saw looked a lot like rituals. The bull's head mask was scary. I mean, it was a rubber mask for sure, but whoever spoke would wear it all night. After they would come up out of the chamber, the masked person would roam the island all night, and it was generally understood that you are to avoid them at all costs. When they wear the mask, they're like animals. They just wander around from one carnal satisfaction to the next. Food, sex, sometimes violence, whatever. And they could do whatever they want. If they came to you and told you to engage in activities or whatever with them, you have to do it. It never happened to me, thankfully, but I made sure on those nights to stay out of sight. After this, people began trying to find Daniel and the other fellow referenced by OP, and we do believe we have found them. All the details that we have matching these guys. We'll get into that in a little bit though. As far as I can tell though, those last messages I read are the final ones from OP. He seems to have never returned, either going through with what he said he would, or just disappearing, or being disappeared. In any of those cases though, what we do know, and this is the first strange thing about this story, is that OP way back when said that he had mailed 3 packets of information, one to each of the mainstream slop media sources, and he said, we'll see which one tells you the truth. Now, as far as I'm aware, nothing ever really came out in terms of a story of what he knew. But what's really bizarre is that within hours of this story going live on 4chan, Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested, which many have come to the conclusion was that somebody at one of these mainstream news sources actually did receive a packet of information from this guy and got in contact with the right people at the government to arrest Maxwell. Honestly, I don't know what else it could be. The fact that this guy who claims to know intimate knowledge about Maxwell and Epstein and their operation, and then decides to go public and post it all, and within hours of him doing so, one of the 2 main perpetrators in this whole child ring gets arrested is unprecedented. The likelihood of that happening is 0 or next to it. So I'm not really sure if anyone can really argue their way around that. Furthermore, so much of what he claims happened, like the possible consuming of people, the rituals, the occultism, the scale of the ring, specific people involved. You take your celebrities, Rihanna, Jay-Z, take your public figures, Mitt Romney, Roger Stone, all the other people mentioned, and the fact that for all intents and purposes, we already know these people to be involved. Many of these guesses, like Rihanna, would have been an impressive guess 2 weeks ago. So the fact that he was saying these things over 6 years ago is insane. I also started looking into the Romney family and found some interesting things. The Romneys are very odd. Romney is an extremely wealthy man, but not really through much of his own volition. He owns somewhere in the range of 6 separate mega mansion type homes, but that's just public. Throughout the family and rumored homes, people believe he owns around 15, some of which have subterranean structures, massive ones at that. Needless to say though, if it is the Mitt Romney family, the political figure, then we have to ask some more questions, because when you look into who was one of the investors in Mitt Romney's business, it doesn't take long to figure out that Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, Robert Maxwell, the Mossad agent, gave multiple millions of dollars to Mitt Romney to help jumpstart the business that he was slowly building. That's a sort of direct connection one cannot look over. And I find it particularly hilarious because there are many of those fact-checking, quote unquote, services that have claimed that this is a bogus connection because Ghislaine Maxwell's dad didn't give the starting capital for Mitt Romney's business. Which is true, he didn't give the starting capital, but he invested a crap load of money very early on. An example of how they split hairs to try and prove their points, but it's for us a better example of a direct connection between the Romney family mentioned by OP and the Romney family and Maxwell and Epstein. So there's something there going on that hints that OP, knowing a deeper relationship and having seen it, could actually be telling the truth. The next thing we have to get into this then, if that's true, is the body dump. Are we really gonna make the argument that it actually happened? And I think no matter what, we have to take it very seriously. Because what OP points out on those coordinates is a very real place in Colorado, and not the sort of place I would think you just find on a map, although I suppose you could if you looked for a while. It is a random dirt path with no meaningful people living around it in the middle of nowhere. And it has this pull off like he describes, and it has some paths leading into the woods. And the only properties nearby are abandoned or seemingly abandoned and just huge plots of land. And it's the sort of place way out there that you would need an off-road vehicle like the Jeep that OP describes having been there. So really, in order for us to get a full confirmation on that bit of the story, we would need some information on when exactly this happened and some ground penetrating radar and dogs, because I think we could actually find something out there. Furthermore, Mitt Romney, along this line, does not have an official son named Cole, but there has been a long, decades-long speculation of illegitimate children and Mitt Romney not wanting that public. In all honesty, when I was researching this, I had no idea how deep the Mitt Romney hole went. I'm really intrigued now, and Romney's name is admittedly all over the Epstein files release. So just something to keep in mind. I also decided to see if I could find anything about Epstein in Colorado, any connections there. And in 2017, there was a series of articles and absurdly long links that were sent to Epstein discussing different homes that he could buy in Colorado, one property of which was only about an hour's drive from where the body dump site was located. I found that particularly interesting because it's one of the few houses out there where you really start looking at it. I mean, within the general vicinity of this dump site, it is just plots of land. And I found one of them on Zillow, and like I said, the picture suggests it's an abandoned home. So there's not much else out there. And the idea that within a short drive of this body's dump site outside of Boulder, Colorado, within the time frame that OP would have been working for him is supremely strange, to say the least, to me. Furthermore, there is a very real Daniel and Marcus that do exist that both match the credentials given, both of whom have news reports on them for degenerate behavior, and they also seem to match the description that OP gives. And OP at one point before he stopped responding did tell another commenter that person sent to him in the article does match the memory of the guy that he has in mind. Something else I thought was unique about this 4chan thread that made it even more realistic to me was, till very recently, we did not know this. This is really just thanks to the most recent Epstein files release. Epstein was a huge 4chan user and was involved in a bunch of communities and had a direct relationship and message exchange and conversations and hangout times with the founder of 4chan. That's straight from the files. Keeping that in mind, there is a direct attack that happens at one point in these threads where people begin posting all sorts of horrible things aimed at OP and trying to get the thread taken down by the mods of 4chan. That paralleled with Epstein's connections to 4chan is really odd, because why else attack a guy if you just think he's messing around? unless there's something really going on. And to that note of something really going on, I was very grateful when I stumbled upon a link on one of these threads on that someone had Necro posted, and it was to this most recent file drop 1 day ago. And when I clicked on that link, I was baffled that it opened up to, in the Epstein files, a screenshot of this thread, meaning that there's probably more screenshots of these threads, which sounds crazy, but that would suggest that Epstein was aware, or someone within Epstein's orbit was aware, if you actually think he's dead, that this thread was going on and these claims were being made about him. Now, depending on what you believe about Epstein, I'm assuming if you're here, you don't think that he actually passed away in that prison. And if you see my other videos, we have one that essentially proves that he's still alive, at least in my opinion. It is the actual same 4chan thread in Epstein's own files. What? Not to mention, there's a whole number of problems with this. It came out after his alleged demise. This suggested he had some sort of knowledge that it was going on. All those sorts of things in hand. If this were fake and there was nothing to it, why on earth would it have been included in the Epstein files? And who would have even looked for it and cared? It's not like this was some trending story. It was pretty much on the underground for a while, and even today, not a ton of people are even aware of this 4chan thread. So why then is it in the files? That is my question overarching this whole thing. If this is nothing and it's all made up, why is it in the files? And honestly, the other overarching thing of this whole thread is that 6 years ago, this sounded kind of crazy, but it was pretty believable that this was going on. And a lot of people were behind the idea that, yeah, there's this whole satanic cabal happening that we're almost entirely unaware of. But now with all the information we have, the claims that OP made sound dead on, and some of them are getting proven by the day at this point. So I'm excited to see how this thing continues to evolve as more information comes out. But I wanted as many people to be aware of this as possible. It's been posted several times around the internet, but it often gets taken down. In fact, finding the link to the pure thread where you can see everything in one place is pretty difficult to do now. I'll link some stuff below if you guys want to read through it yourself. That being said, make sure you comment your thoughts on this. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see each and every one of you.
That's crazy, and I definitely want to say that I believe that Jeffrey Epstein's still alive. There's photos of him walking around Tel Aviv. Again, we don't know if they are fake AI images or if they're real, but gee, they're pretty good fakes if they're not real, because I tell you what, it's pretty convincing to me. And then the fact that obviously his bank accounts reopened, just sort of speaks volumes of, that he's still walking around. He's in witness protection, at least. In Israel, because he was a Mossad agent. He didn't work for Russia or anything like that. But these stories, or these 4chan sort of links and stories, are basically just bringing to everyone's attention that this is legit. This is what's happening. And the truth will come out in time with the people that were in these stories, and but the whole time the FBI had all this information, and nothing was done from their end because they had to protect this, satanic cabal that, was child trafficking and eating children. I mean, it's just so sick. And but I'm so glad that we're now getting all these files, 3 million of them being released, and we're finally getting a bit of clarity on it. But what do you guys reckon? Comment down below, like, subscribe. If there's anything from that you guys know of, please let me know. Anything else you guys want me to research on, please let me know. I'm happy to look into it and make a video on it. Anyways, until next time, guys, I'll see you in the next one.